province, and now he's trying to exercise his influence over other levels of government. And it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better. And now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca. And now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney. And I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
Welcome to another edition of Stand on Guard. I'm coming at you live from Ottawa, our nation's capital. Still is. And I'm David Krayden. What can I say? That little clip there, we'll see more of that later. Jivani, who won his seat last night, he blames Doug Ford for not helping at all and for being a faux conservative, which is what I've always said. And that is incredibly relevant. I was in shock last night, and I lost subscribers. What, because I was wrong? I guess so. I was being overly optimistic. And it's funny, this could still work out if these numbers shift just a little bit. 4 more seats for the Conservatives. They could work with the Bloc to keep the Liberals out of government. Don't know if it's going to happen. And there's the results right now. 168 seats from the Liberals, 144 for the Conservatives, 23 for the Bloc, 7 for the Jagmeet Singh party, and 1 for this green entity. But disappointing. But it's more than disappointing. It's catastrophic. This is catastrophic. And I can't say that enough. This is a disaster. A real disaster. I wrote a column this morning for Human Events. I'm just going to read a couple of lines here for you. The Liberal Party has won a 4th straight election, winning 168 seats in Canada's House of Commons, but coming 4 seats short of a majority government. It would indicate a large absence of political sanity in Canada. And Canadians have truly elected a government that their myopia merits. They say you get the government you deserve. For a party that was over 20 points behind in the polls when Trudeau announced his resignation in January, it was a stunning reversal of fortune. But by running against Trump and the Conservatives, and not the Conservatives, Carney was able to convince enough Canadians that the decade of decline under Trudeau, should be decade of disaster actually, shouldn't be the focus of this election campaign, and that it was all about Trump. It was a spectacular deception, an exercise in psychological operation. You heard of psyops? That's what this was. By a party that believes it is entitled to be the government in Canada endlessly. And the party leader who pretended that he was entitled to be the agent of change, even though he was intimately involved in the Trudeau government as an economic advisor. He was still using those talking points Monday night in his victory speech. As I've been warned, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. But these are not threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen. Actually, it could happen very easily under Mark Carney because there's nobody who's weaker. He's not equipped to deal with Donald Trump. There's something going on between the two of them. Now, I'm not going to read the whole story here. But I just wanted you to, it'll be in Human Events. You can check it out online probably by this afternoon. But what happened here was devastating, and I can't overemphasize that. We're looking at the phasing out of the gasoline-operated automobile. We're looking at net zero policies that are going to destroy the Alberta and the Canadian economy. And we'll get to that as well. But let's listen to Pierre Poilievre. I feel for this guy. Like I say, we're not great friends or anything, but I have known him for 20 years. And this is all he's ever known when he was being an MP. And to lose your seat as the leader of a party, it's just a devastating experience. So I feel for him.
As I said, while we will do our constitutional duty of holding government to account and proposing better alternatives, we will always put Canada first as we stare down tariffs and other irresponsible threats from President Trump. Conservatives will work with the Prime Minister and all parties with the common goal of defending Canada's interests and getting a new trade deal that puts these tariffs behind us while protecting our sovereignty and the Canadian people. I want to thank my Conservative team, my caucus, my members of the Conservative staff and others who've helped reshape the entire political landscape in this country. Conservatives have achieved major breakthroughs tonight. We brought in record support from blue-collar and unionized workers, youth, new Canadians. We gave voices to countless people across this country who've been left out and left behind for far too long. We won the big debates of our time on the carbon tax, on inflation, on housing, on the drug crisis, on crime. Conservatives have been leading the debate, and we will continue to put forward the best arguments to improve the lives of our people right across this country. But we will not stop there. Every single day, our Conservative caucus and I will be holding the government to account on behalf of the millions of Canadians who believed in the message of change. En tant que parti, on a grandement élargi notre soutien et chaque jour, le caucus conservateur et moi allons travailler à Ottawa pour rendre des comptes du gouvernement au nom des millions de Canadiens qui ont décidé de voter pour un vrai changement. J'ai eu l'honneur de parcourir le pays et parler aux milliers de personnes qui ont partagé leurs préoccupations, leurs peines, leurs espoirs. Everywhere I went, hardworking people took precious time out of their day to tell me about their struggles, their pain, their fears, but also their hopes and dreams. Welders and waitresses, farmers and factory workers, seniors, small business owners, and single mothers, young Canadians and young families pleading for the chance to own a home, parents who worried that their kids would never be able to move out of their home, grandparents who saw their grandchildren suffering from the shortfalls of our economy, and countless others who are afraid to go outside because of the rising wave of crime. All of these stories touched my heart and gave me inspiration to work towards something better. These people continue to need voices, and I will continue to fight for them every day, and every day we will never give up on fighting for the Canadian people. Now, I know that some of you might be disappointed that change did not get over the finish line tonight. Change takes time. Most of all, it requires that we never give up, because our people and our country are worth fighting for. So, my message tonight, for the single mother working 2 jobs but still has an empty fridge and an empty bank account, for the young people who despair at never being able to afford a home, for the seniors on fixed incomes whose savings are eroded by inflation and no longer feel safe in their local neighborhood parks, for those who are now living in fear and terror because of crime, for those worried about losing their jobs because of unacceptable tariffs from the United States of America, for all of those who feel left behind and forgotten My message is one of hope. Change will take time, but we will fight for that change, and we will deliver that change, and we will never give up on fighting for the great Canadian promise that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful house on a safe street protected by our brave troops under our proud flag. Canada first, Canada always. Let's bring it home. Thank you very much, Canada. Merci beaucoup, Canada.
So that's, you have to feel for the guy. He did his best to put his best face on last night, and his wife standing there, Anna standing there with smiling. But it's a difficult time. It's a difficult time. And what is my advice? Some Conservatives are going to have to step aside to keep Poilievre in the House of Commons. This Liberal government is going to unravel as the country gets worse. And I predict there's going to be protests in the streets within 3 months demanding change, real change. And Mark, we're going to listen to a bit of Mark Carney here. It's difficult to listen to this guy at all. But let's listen to what he had to say. And I don't think it's included in this clip, but he also talked about one economy. Now, of course, he claims that's about eliminating trade barriers between the provinces. But at other times, he's talked about invoking emergency powers, I guess like the Emergency Act, so he can advance his policies. Now, I believe what he has in mind here is the assumption of natural resource autonomy from the provinces, specifically, and most importantly, Alberta. He wants to control that oil and gas. And I think he will trod on the Constitution, which guarantees provinces autonomy over their natural resources. That's in the Constitution. But I believe Carney is more than capable of using emergency powers to overrule the Constitution. And here he is last night, he's putting on this act like he's done all through the election, like he's really not a bad guy. He's almost a small C conservative. He's advocating policies that are reasonable. He's still net zero Carney. He's still the guy who wants to abolish the gasoline-powered engine. He's still the guy who's in China's pocket. He's still the guy who has been steeped in corruption. That's who Mark Carney really is. But I'll play a bit of this because it is hard to listen to.
To enter politics because I felt we needed big changes in this country. But big changes guided by strong Canadian values. Values that I learned at the dinner table from my parents, Bob and Verley, and from my siblings. I appreciate this more in retrospect from my siblings. My siblings, Brenda, Sean, and Brian. Values that I learned on the ice from my coaches. Values that have been reinforced as I've met with Canadians across this great.
By the way, did you know that there's no evidence Mark Carney ever played hockey at Harvard? It appears to be another thing he completely made up. He lied constantly, and we'll play a video showing that in a while. Just a little more of this.
Country. And those include 3 values that I want to highlight this evening. Humility. It's Canada after all. Ambition. It's Canada after all. And unity. It's Canada. I love it.
Really
right back. These are good values. These are Canadian values. Values that I will do my best. I'm just getting worked up here. These are values that I will do my best to uphold every day as your Prime Minister. You betcha. Okay, well, you have to judge after this next section because I am going to begin I am going to begin with the value of humility, and by admitting that I have much to be humble about. That's true. Over my long... that's not an applause line, it's just a statement of fact. Over my long career, I have made many mistakes, and I will make more. But I commit to admitting them openly, to correcting them quickly, and always learning from them. Humility underscores the importance of governing as a team in cabinet and in caucus, and working constructively with all parties across Parliament, of working in partnership with the provinces and the territories, and with Indigenous peoples. I appreciate this more in retrospect.
What is he doing there? Trying to convince you that he's just a humble man, which of course couldn't be farther from the truth. The reason he hasn't declared his financial assets is because he's probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He is so intertwined with the globalist elites, with the World Economic Forum, with the United Nations, with the movers and shakers who are making a fortune off green energy. We might get back to that later, but I want to briefly talk about, we'll put this Jivani comment back on, because I'm so glad a Conservative MP called out Doug Ford for what he is, a phony Conservative.
Exercise his influence over other levels of government, and it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way, and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better, and now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca, and now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney, and I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
And Jamil Jivani winning again tonight. Congratulations,
Thank
first
you
of
very
all.
much. Yeah, we have a great team here in Bowmanville, Oshawa North. Very excited and happy to bring home a victory.
I do want to ask you, Mr. Jivani, because you've just spoken to your supporters, a large group that's here at the pub here in Bowmanville, North Oshawa, and you said to them, among other things, that Doug Ford was a problem for you in this campaign. You said that he sabotaged the Conservative campaign. That's your words. You said he was a hype man for the Liberals. Take me through how you see that.
Yeah, well, look, Doug Ford just went through an election. I have differences of opinion with him. I don't like how he's managed healthcare or education, but out of respect, we didn't say anything. Federal party, we didn't get in his way. When it was our turn to run an election, he couldn't stay out of our business, always getting his criticisms and all his opinions out, distracting our campaign, trying to make it about him, trying to position himself as some kind of political genius that we needed to be taking cues from.
Was it him specifically? Was it his campaign manager, Corey, tonight? Do you see Doug Ford as a problem for the federal party in the outcome of this race?
I see Doug Ford as a problem for Ontario and for Canada. I think he's not doing a great job in running this province, and now he's trying to exercise his influence over other levels of government, and it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way, and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better, and now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca, and now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney, and I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
Some would argue that the challenge within the federal Conservative movement is that there are these divisions, divisions that in some ways you're outlining tonight, and that it is the thing that stops or prevents, holds back the federal party from the majority government that it seeks. Do you see that as a possible outcome to some of the fractions and frictions that exist within the federal party?
There is a lot of unity from Conservatives across the board. Peter MacKay and Stephen Harper and Jason Kenney, James Moore, all sorts of people who've been part of our movement for a long time, united behind Pierre. They're opportunists like Doug Ford. And I think it's not about ideology or differences of beliefs. It is about some people believing our purpose as Conservatives is to be an alternative to what the Liberals offer. And then there are people like Doug Ford who are opportunists. And I reject that outright.
Do you have any leadership ambitions?
Look, we have a leader of our party right now. We're still waiting in for the final seat counts. I don't know what tomorrow holds. My focus, though, is on all the young people, all the parents, the moms, the dads who came to us and trusted us to offer an alternative, a brighter future. We're going to see that through. We're going to keep fighting. And when the next federal election comes around, Conservatives will earn the trust of more voters, and we will bring home a victory nationally.
My last question to you looks at the results. As we speak here right now, 160 for the Liberals, 151 for your Conservatives. This is a lot closer of a race than some had expected. Why do you think that is?
Well, look, I think a lot of people misunderstood just the frustration that Canadians felt. All these polls that showed Conservatives far below the Liberals, I think we're missing how many young people saw our party as the party of dreamers and hustlers and strivers and builders. That is our identity for young people, and we are going to continue offering them that vision for Canada. As we continue to see progress made, earning more trust, growing our party, getting more union support, police support, young families, working class families, I think we will see this identity that Pierre Poilievre has helped develop crystallize further, and our party will only go up from here.
Jamil Jivani, thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you.
He's right on. Here's what's coming under Mark Carney. I showed this yesterday, but it's worth seeing again because it's totally frightening. This was in Toronto, an ad, a huge electronic billboard paid for by Greenpeace, elbows up. Don't you hate that expression now? And what are they resisting? But this is toxic. And this is 1984. It's the this is the psychological operation I was talking about, the psyops that were going on. Not by just the Liberal Party, not just by Mark Carney, but by all of the people and organizations out there that are supporting him and have supported him. And this is right out of 1984. It's absolutely right. But you know what frightens me even more? That apparently there's that many Canadians who are willing to accept Liberal failure, who are willing to say, I'm going to vote for them again. And look at this aggression. Because it's going to get even worse before it gets better. And I don't know if Canada's going to survive. I haven't even addressed this yet. But, you know, lunatics out there, it's going to get worse. And I think Alberta is going to seriously consider separation. And this has already come up with Premier Daniel Smith. And we're going to listen to her comments on this.
Idea about Western separation. Preston Manning wrote an op-ed last week in the Globe and Mail saying, warning people in the rest of Canada, a vote for Carney's Liberals is a vote for Western secession. Do you see it that way?
I think that there is a lot of frustration on the part of Albertans, and I think you see it. I mean, I'd be blind if I didn't see what is occurring in the media, on social media. I have to acknowledge that there's a lot of unhappiness on the part of Albertans in the way we've been treated by the Liberal government for the past 10 years. And unfortunately for the current Prime Minister, he seems to not be very clear about what it is he's going to do to reset that relationship, because he says different things in different parts of the province, different parts of the country, different things in English and French. And so I'm going to have a 6-month period after the election where I have a number of items that I put on the table early that I think need to be done to address the 10 years of economic devastation that the federal government has caused to our province. And I would hope no matter who wins that we'd be able to correct those things. But there's I judge people more by their action than by their words. And so I want to be able to see what happens after the next election, and then I'll gauge where Albertans are at that point.
Thank you, Rebel News, for that. And look at some of these slides here. It says, Premier Smith has agreed to ask Albertans how they feel about separation. This is interesting. 44% Main Street research. This is a mainstream polling company. These are not a bunch of far-right true believers. This is a mainstream polling company. Found 44%. That's now. Carney, this was taken before Carney got elected in March 20th. Now, how do you think that's going to look a month later? How do you think it's going to look in a month from now? Because Carney is going to be the greatest accelerator of separation in Alberta, any prime minister. And he can stand up there and say, I'm Mr. Humility. I'm Mr. Humble. But there are some. Why should Alberta want to stay in a Canada where their natural resources are essentially controlled by the federal government with net zero policies? They cannot freely work in the oil patch or natural gas. They're being told how to operate the energy sector. It's a bunch of bureaucrats from Ottawa. How do you think Alberta feels about that? And then they're told you've got to pay all the provinces in Canada with the profits from your natural resources under the equalization program. And that's has become what Canada is all about. It's the welfare state writ large. And this is one here. Independent, either on its own or with other Western provinces separate from Canada, all voters. And this one had 56% support. So this is absolutely incredible. What kind of a man is Mark Carney? Well, as I've been telling you since December, Pierre Trudeau picked up the anti-Trump stick actually late November when he went down to Mar-a-Lago for Thanksgiving. Mark Carney came on the scene and immediately took the ball from Trudeau and started talking about how Canada was going to be destroyed by the U.S. And he has used that, and this is fascinating. This is how we should think of Mark Carney, as a man who chronically lies.
President Trump respected Canada's sovereignty both privately and in his public conversations.
He did.
Were you being truthful?
He absolutely did. He absolutely did. Look.
March 28th, did President Trump bring up the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state during that call with you?
As I just said, the president brings this up all the time. He brought it up yesterday. He's brought it up before.
He lied.
There's a difference between the conversation that was held between leaders of government, which was this conversation, and a discussion that led directly to an agreement that as sovereign countries, we would have negotiations about our partnership following the election on Monday. That's what the President and I agreed. That's what both of us reported back. And that's what I'm ready to do. And what's at stake in this election is how well we come together as a country for those difficult discussions with the Americans. And to be clear, I have said well before that call, and virtually every time that I've spoken since that call, that President Trump, the Americans, want to break us so they can own us. Those aren't just words. That's what's at risk. That's why we have to build Canada strong. That's why we have to go hard. That's why we have to negotiate properly. That's not why we have to build outside options. That's why we have the plan that we do.
I asked you about this on March 28th after the call, and you said that President Trump respected Canada's sovereignty both privately and in his public conversations.
He did.
Were you being truthful?
He absolutely did. He absolutely did.
So that is a man who's obviously prevaricating. You can see it written on his face. But we'll leave the last word to Yves-Francois Blanchet, who I really have no time for. I don't think separatists should be sitting in the House of Commons. But I like his analysis there. Sometimes the Bloc has some interesting analysis.
More to have been a stunt. He wanted to make a statement. I am Mark Carney. I'm the best of them all. I'm a great negotiator. I have managed crisis in the past. I would change the world. Trust me. And it appears that it never happened. That the call was not what has been described afterwards. That there was no agreement, no support for Canada's sovereignty, no beginning for a deal, just the show of a man who wanted to pretend something which appears today not to be true. I believe many people in Canada and in Quebec will say, what the hell is that? And if that is not true, what else is not true?
What else is not true? Just want to show you my merchandise. I'll be back with some final words about where we go from here. There we are.
To have been a stunt.
All right. So where do we go from here? Well, as I've said, I don't think there's any reason to purge Pierre Poilievre as the leader of the party. I don't think there's any reason to think he's wasted, that he's used up his usefulness, or that he cannot do this in the future. But we need to continue to resist the Mark Carney government, because it's going to be, I think, the most evil government that's ever descended upon this country. It is straight from hell. And it is so in tune and so in bed with the globalists who want you to be poor, the people who say you'll own nothing and be happy, you'll eat insects, you'll never see a T-bone steak again, you can't drive your car, you can't fly. But it's a different set of rules for the elites, isn't it? And Mark Carney is definitely one of those elites. He doesn't understand average Canadians. But we need to stick together here. and to continue the fight and come back another day. Because I don't think this government is going to last more than a year. In fact, we might be at this again by the fall, especially when those protests start that I predict. Yeah, I know I was wrong about the election result, but we should have protested when we had the parliament prorogued because it was a violation of our democracy. We should have been out in the streets at that time. Don't make the same mistake again. We need to get out there and fight. And that's, because I don't mean with our fists, but we need to fight back. And that's where we are right now. So let not your hearts be troubled. Don't despair. This is a setback. But on the positive side, Poilievre attracted more blue-collar voters than in that probably the history of the Conservative Party. And why there are that many stupid Canadians who think Mark Carney is their friend and the Liberal Party is going to help them? Well, maybe because we have so many people who are on the public dole. Those people know Mark Carney will help them. And they'll have all these refugees who come into the country and are getting paid more than seniors. We need a total overhaul of our system, a total dismantling of what our government has become. And until we do that, the hardworking Canadians are going to be suffering and paying for everybody else. Anyway, gone a little over today. Thanks for watching. It's nice to be back and feeling good. And thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for putting me over 50,000. Well, now we're going to head to about 100,000. And thank you for continuing to watch this station when I was not here for 4 days. And it's nice to see the crowd is still there. In fact, this has been the best rated show I've ever had. We'll be back again tomorrow at 10. God bless you. God bless our country. God help our country. And Godspeed to all of you. I'm David Krayden. And this has been live.